Welcome to the Sunday Conversation. Our guest is Congressman Drew Ferguson. He's a Republican from up in West Point, from Troup County. Drew, good to see you, sir.
Good to be with you, Chuck.
Sorry, Mr. Congressman, we go back a long ways. I will be more formal. You're in Columbus, but you're in the district for the next couple of weeks.
Yes.
That's rare. You haven't been in the district when you weren't in campaign mode.
Well, either campaign mode or work mode. It's probably the last year was probably one of the toughest, both from a legislative standpoint and a campaign standpoint. Traveling around the country, but also being very engaged on issues that we knew were important to Georgia and to the 3rd District. So this 2-week stint in the district is it's welcome. It's a welcome time for me to re-engage in the district and really get the feedback again from what businesses in this community are thinking and talking about. Most importantly, how are the citizens of this area right now being impacted by the policies that have been pushed out of D.C. over the last 2 years.
I want to get into that in just a second, but we're obviously taping this at the National Infantry Museum. You got a tour of the facility this week. What are your impressions of the museum and what they're trying to do?
Well, first, let me say it's good to be back here. Every time that I've been here, it leaves a mark on you and an imprint. But we're so thankful and so grateful to have this amazing facility here that tells the story of our infantry, tells the story of our Army, and really kind of makes it an incredible experience to walk through. And we know that it's important to tell that history. It's important to honor that history, but it's also important to educate our young men and women that are coming through that in some way we might want to inspire them with this museum. So it's a pleasure to be back here, and it's certainly an amazing facility that we're very blessed to have.
Caught you a minute ago walking out in the global war on terrorism monument. Hundreds of names of people who've lost their lives in Iraq, Afghanistan since 9/11. That's a sober place, isn't it?
It is, and to know that those men and women died for our freedoms and to defend us and our lives, it's a powerful moment to walk out onto that memorial, just as it is the Vietnam War Memorial or the Korean War Memorial. You go through this wherever these honors exist to our men and women of service. It is sobering, and I think when most people look and they realize that that's not just a name on a piece of granite, but that's an American life and a fellow American that gave their life for my freedom. We owe them a huge debt of gratitude.
Everybody gives something, some give all, and that's definitely a monument. I want to talk a little bit about the politics in D.C. You've been in the middle of it as a Republican. The Republicans, when you got there, Republicans were in the majority. The Democrats held it for a few years. Now Republicans are back in the majority. What do you say to American people of all stripes, conservatives, liberals, right, left, about what's happening in D.C. right now?
Well, I think what's happening in D.C. right now, in many regards, it's not healthy for the country because of the division. But in some cases, you have to stand your ground because you cannot allow the country to go to places that some in Congress want to take it. Give you a perfect example. We had a resolution on the floor the other day condemning the horrors of socialism. We had a lot of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle that simply could not vote for that. So when we see a movement to do away with our freedoms, with our individual freedoms, our economic freedoms, our intellectual freedoms, the freedom to be who we want to be in this great country, and to have the government more in control of it, we have to push back against that. But let me say this. I was elected in 2016 and was sworn in 2017. And I don't think that there's been a class like there was in the class that was sworn in 2017. I don't think that there's been a class that's seen as many monumental Januaries in a row as we have. The first one was the election of Donald Trump and him landing in D.C. and the impact that had. The very next January Speaker Pelosi regained the gavel, and there was turmoil in the House at that point. Then we had January the 6th. By the way, we've had COVID and a war in Ukraine between that. And then we just had a vote series of 15 votes to elect a Republican Speaker of the House of Representatives. So there's a lot of turmoil, but the one thing that I remind people of, it's also a reflection of a changing electorate. And so there are a lot of shifting sands below us, and some people that used to vote Republican are now voting Democrat. Some people that are voting Democrat are now voting Republican. And I think that at its core is maybe one of the reasons for the uneasiness.
You were in that room for those 15 votes. Cameras, because they were catching members, saw a lot of what the people got to see, a lot of what was going on in the people's house.
Yes.
Some of it wasn't pretty on both sides. When you look at that, what happened over that week and that led to the election of Speaker McCarthy, a friend of yours? What do you tell people to say, hey, because there appeared to be a huge fight within your party to get there? What do you tell people about that?
I look at our conference today, and over half of our conference has been elected for the first time since 2016. And it's a different group of men and women that have been sent there and believe that their mission is to put policies in place that put our great country and our fellow Americans first. And this argument was about a shift in the Republican Party to say, we want to be for things that are good for America. We just don't want to say no. And so this battle was about making sure that those rank and file members in the conference, including myself, had a say in the process, had a say in the budgeting process, had a say in the policy. Members of a community want their member of Congress to be able to have an impact on a piece of legislation. So this battle was about making sure that the rank and file members had a voice in the process.
I'm used to your style. I've seen it all the way back to your days as mayor of West Point. Your style is not to sit in a room and call somebody a liar or call the president a liar, or you're not going to draw attention to yourself. How do you, as somebody whose style is very different from others in your caucus, how do you rectify that?
Well, I really don't try to rectify it. I have a relationship with my district, and this district is special. It's a great part of the United States to represent, and it's a great place in Georgia to represent. Tremendous history, tremendous opportunity, and a drive by the people that live here that's second to none. And they pretty much expect a common sense, practical approach to things. They expect us to guard against the things that take from them, and they expect us to protect the things that they hold dear.
Congressman, if America were a stock, are you buying or selling?
I'm buying.
Why?
I believe that we've come through some very trying times. We have seen this. We've seen some past challenges over the past few terms, both from a congressional point of view, from a White House point of view, and really, quite candidly, personal views around the country. People have been impacted by loss of life from COVID. We're seeing threats from around the world. We're seeing things that are really straining the American family right now. But also look at the men and women that they are sending to Congress to represent them. And there are some really talented, bright men and women from around the country. A lot on the Republican side, and there are a few good ones on the other side of the aisle as well, that really care about this country. And I think Americans care about this country, and I think Americans care about their future. And I think that we're bound and determined to find the common threads that lead us ahead. And the other reason is we've done a bad job of having internal fights over the past 20 years or so. We now have a common enemy. We have a common enemy that every one of us share. We have actually two common enemies. One of them is our national debt that threatens our sovereignty and bankrupts our children and our grandchildren. But communist China is a real threat to the United States of America and to our freedoms around the world. They've made it known and they've made it clear that they mean to do us harm and to take over our American way of life. And when we unite and we fight a common enemy, I think we're going to be successful.
Last question. I want to talk a little bit about Columbus.
Yeah.
The Columbus part of your district has shrunk in redistricting. I think you went from 40, 50, 60,000 voters to maybe now less than 20, 16. Will you continue to represent Columbus, even though it's a narrower part of your
Sure.
district, in the same ways, like the Ralston, things you've done in the past, where you've worked with Congressman Bishop, or you have led the efforts on Columbus-centric things? Will you continue to champion Columbus like you have in the past?
Chuck, I have a West Georgia view of Columbus, not a DC view of Columbus. I learned when I was mayor that we have economies and social networks that are tied together. We do economic development together, whether it's something as massive as the Kia plant or something as important as Fort Benning. There's shared benefits throughout this region. And proud to have a colleague on the other side of the aisle and Representative Bishop that we can work with on joint issues. But I think as long as I keep a Georgia view and a West Georgia view of this and not a DC view of it, we're going to be just fine. And Columbus is an important part of the state of Georgia, and it is an honor to represent it. And I feel very confident that the district line never dictated our involvement here because we understand the regional impact that it has.
Congressman, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chuck.
Always a pleasure to spend a few minutes with you. You've been watching another Sunday Conversation. Come back next week. No telling who's going to be in that chair. Thanks for watching, guys.